Most people don't need new goals. They need new beliefs, and they accept these false stories like I don't have enough education, or I'm too old, or, I've tried that before and it didn't work. And so we try to replace, I call those rational lies, right? We're trying to rationalize why we can't do a thing. But what we're actually doing is we're telling ourselves lies about our ability to believe. And so we start to change those rational lies around, and we start to reteach ourselves new stories about what we are capable of. Mindset and worthiness and a lot of those things shift pretty much overnight.
You're asking yourself, why am I doing this?
Smart people would know how to use all these different tools. They start with something small.
You'll never get your entire organization if you don't pull off operations. Don't give up.
It can be as small as that.
I think you guys are going to have our last today.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Delegate That podcast, where we discuss the art and science of delegation, business management, and leadership. Today, I am thrilled to talk to Joe Evangelisti, who seems to be right in line with all of that business management, leadership, delegation. Really looking forward to kind of digging into your story, talking about what you do. So if you could, Joe, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners.
Absolutely. Yeah. They call me Coach Joe. I'm a real estate developer, business strategist, performance coach. Spent the last too many years in real estate, single family to self-storage to commercial development, and made many transitions through the years and pivots. So we can get into that a little bit today as well if you want.
Nice. I love it. So you've obviously done a bunch of real estate and all that type of stuff. So when you're talking about, I'm going to go into the coaching side first, though. If you're coaching folks on business and how to kind of grow all of that, what has been some of the highlights that you would say that you've seen of folks like, hey, I'm coming in with some of these terrible business practices, doing all these things, and some of the highlights about how you've walked folks through to success, or maybe just to help them shut the door of their business. Maybe in some cases. So kind of walk me through some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I unlock a lot of this potential by what I call walking the 5 roads to victory, right? It's kind of like a battle-tested, breakdown of different pieces and parts that people need. Because like you had mentioned, some people, they walk into it not knowing. A lot of times it's really the limiting belief and the knowledge that they think that they don't have or that they need. Mm-hmm. A lot of times it's not that they don't have the tools or the resources and that type of thing. A lot of times it's worthiness. It's mindset. It's control of what's possible. So, I love you just told the story about your wife who's getting ready to retire from the military. I hope I can share that. But
yeah,
one of my great students I've known for a long time. I was in the military with, just retired as a master chief at 23 and a half years. And he's 3 years into business, and they're going to do $8 million this year. So nice. Sometimes it's not about, again, necessarily knowing everything. Sometimes it's just having that belief that you can and you should go out and tackle hard things.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I homeschool my kids. So talking about that belief and thought process, that mindset, I mean, between homeschool and golf, it is a constant battle of, the 6 inches between your ears. And that's, I fight that myself on the business side of the house. Now, so you mentioned the 5 roads to victory. So what is the belief in yourself one of those 5 roads? And if so, what are the other 4?
Yeah, I call them the 5 reasons people fail to scale, right? These are the things we need to focus on, and we do in our coaching. And it almost always comes back to one of these 5 things, right? Sometimes we're on, sometimes we're off, but definitely starts with mindset and worthiness, or what a lot of people call limiting beliefs. Most people don't need new goals. They need new beliefs, and they accept these false stories like I don't have enough education, or I'm too old, or, I've tried that before and it didn't work. And so we try to replace, I call those rational lies, right? We're trying to rationalize why we can't do a thing. But what we're actually doing is we're telling ourselves lies about our ability to believe. And so we start to change those rational lies around, and we start to reteach ourselves new stories about what we are capable of. Mindset and worthiness and a lot of those things shift pretty much overnight.
Yeah, it's it's getting to that point that allows it to shift. It's the hard part. If only we could all fast forward through that.
It takes work. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, it's a lot of work for sure.
Do you feel overwhelmed with mundane tasks that eat up your valuable time? It's time to reclaim your schedule and focus on what truly matters. Get your time back with elite remote talent without the time zone hassle. Delegate $10 an hour tasks to focus on more $1,000 an hour tasks. Schedule your free strategy call at 𝗺𝗽𝗃𝗃𝗃.io.
So, as you've been kind of working through some of the mindset stuff, what are some of the practical things that you've coached folks on? Like, hey, here are some things that you really need to practically start doing yourself to start working through some of that mindset issue.
Yeah. First of all, it comes back to a lot of ways that we handle our day, right? So gratitude is number one, right? Gratitude is an absolute game changer for most people. What I always say is what we focus on, it starts to expand. And I know that's somebody else's quote from years and years ago, but the concept behind it is if I'm focused on gratitude, I start to focus on opportunity. I start to focus on outcome. I start to focus on what could be. Instead of focusing in the past and constantly kicking myself because I had a roadblock or an obstacle or a speed bump that I couldn't overcome before, and focusing on the past story. I like to focus on a future story of what could be. And it really unlocks a lot of things for a lot of folks. I use this analogy a lot, but I heard 𝗬𝗏 speaking about this years ago, and he used to coach Tom Brady when he was playing football. And, he never disclosed how much, but he said it was a lot of money, right? And he goes, what was the number one thing Tom would need? And he goes, Tom would ask me to call him 10 minutes before kickoff, just to remind him who the hell he was, right? And so, even people at massively high levels of success and somebody that's out there winning Super Bowls, every once in a while, we just need to be reminded of who we are and what we have inside of us. As
a big Tom Brady and New England Patriots fan, I agree with that for sure. So. All right. So let's shift this a little bit then back into the business side of the house. Now, how have you taken some of the skills, or maybe it's probably a little bit of both. You've learned a lot of these things through doing business yourself that now you're sharing with others, but also I'm sure you're learning from others that you are coaching on how to kind of apply stuff in your own business. So walk me through some of what your business looks like and some of those, some of the ways that you've kind of plugged in some of these limiting beliefs or some of the struggles that you've had personally as you were kind of building some of these things that, you're from what I saw on your LinkedIn, you're working on a $200 million project right now that, when I talk to somebody about buying an apartment building, they're like, wait a minute, I know how to buy a single family house. I'm like, no, it's just one more zero. Don't worry about it. Like, let's just do it. So, how have you kind of worked through some of those yourself, and as you've grown and scaled?
Yeah, no, you're leading right into like part two, which is we talk about the strategy or the plan of attack, as I call it. And just to be clear, we're doing 200 million over a course of like 10 or 12 sites around the country. So it's not like we're building a $200 million development, but it's factual, but it's a lot of work. And I always say, like, you can't hit targets that you don't have mapped out. Right. Mm-hmm. So, if you ask somebody about a vacation plan, for example, and they're going to Mexico, right? They know everything. They know how they're getting there. They know what seat they have on the plane. They know when they're taking off. They know how they're getting to the hotel. They know where their room is. It going to view the ocean, the pool, the courtyard, or, maybe you got cheap and you're facing the dumpster. But when you ask people about their life, what do you really want? And I had a coach just hit me between the eyes about 8 or 10 years ago. I flew out to see him in Utah. And the first thing he said to me is, what do you want? And I laughed. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, no, I'm dead serious. What do you want? And we spent 8 hours whiteboarding what I really wanted. And it was the first time in my life that I actually ever did that. And so creating that strategy is paramount to getting to the outcome that you want to achieve. I didn't get to 200 million in development by just, piddling along. We decided long ago we want to build 100 self-storage facilities in 10 years. Now, I'm way behind the curve. I don't think I'll get anywhere near 100 in 10 years. But what will I do? I'll probably do 50 or 60. And that alone is absolutely massive compared to flipping houses, right? So I have to create that outcome, and I have to really start to reverse engineer, okay, what does it take to get there? So, in coaching, what we're really doing is we're closing the gap. I call it decades into days. You're going to figure it out on your own at some point. Jim Rohn has a great quote. He says, in 5 years, we're either going to be at a predetermined location or an undetermined location. Right? God willing, you're alive in 5 years, you're going to be somewhere, but you get so much further along when you actually have a vision, you have a clear goal, and you have an outcome that you want to reach, and you repeat that back to yourself, and you know what you're chasing every single day.
I love that. I have never heard that. In 5 years, you're going to be in a predetermined location or an undetermined location. And that's one of those.
Hold a little bit.
The concept is phenomenal. And as long as we're thinking about it that way, it's one of those that, how do we apply getting ourselves to the predetermined location? Well, again, set the plan in place, just like you did for your vacation, just like you get it for your vacation. So how long ago did you set the plan to do 100 self-storage in 10 years? How long ago was that plan, and how did you kind of start to implement that plan moving through?
Yeah. And a lot of people don't believe me when I tell them this, but this was the plan from day one before we had ever bought our first piece of dirt. We decided, because, and again, I do a lot of things I hear off of quotes or I read, or, I'm constantly trying to feed my brain. And somebody was saying at one point, like Elon Musk probably has one of the biggest visions. Now, I know he's controversial right now and no one wants to talk about him, but look, he's changed the game in so many different business entities. And so when he sets a vision, what does he say? He says, I want to populate Mars, right? It's not even likely in his lifetime that that's going to happen, right? But what happens when you set a vision so big that everyone else's vision can fit inside of yours? You start to attract real talent. You start to find real game changers. I mean, Elon notoriously had engineers quitting their jobs around the world and taking pay cuts to work on SpaceX to launch rockets into space. And look what they've done just in the last 5 or 10 years. It's unbelievable, right? So I just knew I had to come up with a big vision. And I thought, well, what's a big vision? Well, 100 Class A self-storage, a big ass vision, right? I don't think we can hit it, but I'm going to wake up every morning believing I can. And that's what got us to the point that we're at now. Now, of course, we're in some crazy commercial debt structuring turmoil and all kinds of nastiness that we can get into. But, the reality of it is we would never have gotten to this point if we didn't start out with a belief and a vision. And
when you had that belief and vision, was that something that you just kind of had in your brain, or was this something that you wrote down that you started talking about a lot more? Like, how did you apply that to real life?
Yeah, no, I totally reverse engineered it on a whiteboard and scared the shit out of myself the whole time. I wrote, okay, well, what does it cost to build these? What's it going to be worth? At the time, you think like, and again, I'm not saying this to brag, guys. I hope the listeners understand. This is about me creating a vision that's so scary, I'm afraid to tackle. Mm-hmm. And so when we first started writing on a board, my initial inclination was we're going to create $1 billion portfolio. When we started underwriting it and reverse engineering and adding up what's 100 facilities worth in 10 years, it's a $2 or $3 billion portfolio. Yeah, I'm not going to probably hit that in the next 10 years. But again, that vision just scared. It was like, wow, okay, so how many do we have to do? Okay, well, year one, we're not going to build more than 1 or 2. Year 2, and then we started getting into a groove, where we have a team that's capable of building 8 or 10 a year right now. Now we can't find those deals, so there's a different limitation there. But I could easily build 10 deals a year all over the country with the team that we have. And so that team got kind of manifested through the vision. It's like, how do I build it? Well, who do I need? And how do we have to underwrite? And how do we have to acquire? And how do we have to manage the development? And what happens after we're done developing it? And that started working it into the game plan. Like early on, I decided I didn't want to be in property management. So we only build facilities that are big enough for the 𝗬𝗎smarts and the Extra Spaces of the world to manage. I want to be a pure acquisition deal maker developer on this side of things. And I'm going to asset manage after the fact, but I don't want to do the day-to-day operations, and I don't want to do the storage wars thing and all the auction. Right. And so again, the vision started to dictate the parts and pieces that go into it to make it work. And now we start to get clarity on, okay, what do? We build Class A self-storage, most climate control in XYZ areas.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you're not, I'm going to rewind and go back to one of the things you said, make your vision big enough that other people can have their vision inside of it, right? I mean, that is I've heard that a few different times over the last probably year, and I absolutely love kind of thinking about that and going, okay, is my vision large enough to be able to fit other people's in it? Because that's how you bring in massive talent. So when you started bringing in this team that's capable of doing 8 to 10 deals, 8 to 10 developments a year, how did you kind of go, okay, how did you talk to these folks to be able to bring them in to say, get them excited about it, be able to say, hey, like you're the right person for the right seat. Like I'm using EOS language on right person, right seat type stuff. So I don't know if you use EOS or not, but like, how did you make sure that you're bringing in the right people, that they are, sometimes it's hard to bring in somebody that has a vision into a visionary's idea. So how did you kind of bring in that sort of team that's capable of doing all of that stuff underneath you, and not overtake yourself in one way, shape, or form?
Yeah, Adam, I love that question. And, the answer is it's almost as difficult, and for some people, more difficult to share the vision, right? Because how many of us have inner dreams, inner visions, inner thoughts? Man, one day I could do this. What makes it real? A lot of times what makes it real is sharing the vision with people who can help you get there. And so we have this first inclination to be really limited in our beliefs and our mindsets of even coming up with the vision. Now I got to have the guts to tell other people I'm going to go do that. Right. And so what happens is you actually start attracting them by default. Again, can you call it manifestation, call it whatever you want. If I run around telling enough people I want to build 100 self-storage facilities, what starts to happen? I start to find investors that are interested. I start to find people who want to work with us who are interested. I find people from other businesses, and there's not one particular, but let's say somebody else's vision is to build 2 or 3 in the next 10 years. And someone's scratching their head going, I can't make a career out of this. Over the next 10 years, you want to build 3 facilities? I want to be where the action is. I want to be where they're moving and shaking. And so what happens is the more you share your vision, more often than not, especially if you have you deeply believe the outcome you can create, you start to create a story around it, and you start to find people want to attach themselves to that story. I mean, again, a la Elon Musk, right? That's why they come to do it, because they want to be part of that story. They want to say, I was the first guy to bring a rocket back down and touch down, whether they're involved as an engineer or, they're out there cleaning the deck in the afternoon, right? It's still something that's really, really cool to be a part of that story. And I think that vision helps attract a lot of good talent.
And I'm gonna use a personal anecdote, semi-personal. So I was deployed to Iraq. I think it was so we're talking 2006 timeframe. And I had a friend of mine that we went to competing high schools. We wrestled against each other, and he worked for NASA at the time. And he sent me a message. We were just chatting back and forth on AOL Instant Messenger or something, whatever it was. And he was like, "Hey, I'm going to leave NASA. I'm going to go work for this new company. I'm like, I think it's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to learning more about it and seeing what they do. But it's going to be like a $30,000 a year pay cut." And he took a $30,000 a year pay cut to go work for Elon Musk at SpaceX in 2006 because he saw that vision and was super excited about it. And he took a massive pay cut. And this is for anybody listening. You could when you see that person who has that vision and you can chase that down and you can pair your skills with their vision and say, I'm going to make something happen. Like he was able, he ended up becoming, he had a bunch of different titles, but he was one of the lead launch engineers for a long time and then ended up leaving to another company. But that's the type of thing that you're going to attract those types of people who change the world with you and make a huge difference. So it still baffled my mind as I was sitting there as an E4 in Iraq going, if I took a $30,000 a year pay cut, I'd be crying, living in a cardboard box. But it's one of those things, have that vision, make it happen. So I love what you're saying here.
I love that you have a specific story around it because I tell that story a lot and it really is the truth. Why do super advanced, successful corporate America people quit to go work at startups? It's the same concept. They want to be part of the story, man. They want to know. They want to be the next Venmo, the next PayPal, the next SpaceX. And so the significance is a huge part. Not only is it one of the 6 human needs, but it's really one thing that drives a lot of us. That, in a lot of ways, I don't want to get off topic, but significance is what drives the military. Right? Why do we do what we do? So we can be proud and put on a uniform and have a chevron and, salute at us like that. That's a big part of human need. And so is being part of a big vision.
I'm glad you did make that transition. I was going to ask you were a Navy Seabee, so you had said it right before we even started recording. Yeah, we build the Navy, right? So that I would imagine you learned some solid skills from the military that you've transferred over. So how did you what did you learn from the military side that you've now transferred over? Whether it's leadership, whether it's your engineering skills, whatever it is, what sort of skills did you take to transfer over to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think this is going to sound kind of cliche, but a lot of the stuff that I transitioned, I love to say leadership, right? Because I was an E5 when I got out, and I was probably mostly in charge of 20 people at tops, right? So, leadership is a big growth factor that happened to me while I was in the military. But really, it was hard work, it was discipline, it was the boring stuff, man. It was a schedule, right? Getting up every morning and being on the tarmac by 6:15. Having that kind of ingrained in you kind of strategy already built, and just it happens, right? So I think that's carried me into my business world where, I try to stay self-disciplined. I still have bad days. I still have days where I'm depressed or I'm bummed out or I'm not at my best. But I have more productive days than bad days. And I think that I owe a lot of that to just the stick-to-itiveness of being in the military.
Yeah, for sure. And I was chatting with somebody recently that talked about how he had a retired Marine that was working for him and then just up and left because he didn't agree with something. But I was trying to figure out how to relay kind of some of those things that you're talking about. How do I make that more tangible for folks to be able to say, hey, no, like these military veterans, they've got some skills in them that they don't even know they have that are going to be really solid for what we're doing. Because you see a bunch of folks like you who go from the military to becoming very successful in business. And it's because of those knowledge, skills, and abilities that they've learned to kind of tailor over. When you are looking at somebody to hire, how do you take a look at their past, whether it's military related, whether it's their previous job experience, whatever it is? How do you look at their past to figure out how you're going to apply it into what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's actually a really great transition into the third part we're going to talk about, which is the toolkit, or I call like systems and support. Right. So one thing that's really, really important with who I look for, as well as the leadership and within organizations or helping clients, is it's not about resources. It's about resourcefulness. Mm-hmm. Right. So I want to make sure we're hiring problem solvers. I want to make sure we're hiring people that have faced adversity and somehow overcome it. I want to know their stories. So I'll ask them questions like that. Give me a time where you thought you failed and you learned a lesson. Give me a time where you thought, again, in the military, we've all done this, right? You've gone out and done something completely wrong. You had egg on your face and you're like, oh man, how did I do that better? So I think that resourcefulness is not just a trait of a lot of veterans, but, it's something I'm really paying attention to because a lot of people they're sitting on gold. They don't even know it. They want to see that they know how to solve problems. And those are the type of people you want in your organization. Again, I don't care where they're at in the food chain. I want problem solvers.
I think the scenario-based questions is something that I encourage everybody as I'm talking to folks about their business or anywhere. If you're hiring somebody, scenario-based questions like tell me a time when, and you can even use ChatGPT to help you create some of those if you can't develop some of those things yourself. But tell me a time when, and then have them tell the story. Oftentimes you can tell if they're, BSing you the entire time or if this is an actual story that happened. And if they don't have a story, they're probably not the right fit. They haven't experienced something that that is going to help them get through the things that you need them to do. So I strongly encourage folks to do the scenario based. I don't care who you're hiring for, whether it's an assistant or a COO. Ask scenario based questions and learn through it. So you mentioned the tools, the toolkit for the number 3. What goes into number 4? Where are we at there next?
Number 4, probably the most important one, is controlling the clock. Right. So we all get 168 hours a week, and what we do with the hours matters. That you hear so many people talk about. Doom scrolling and watching too much Netflix, or what do you do on your weekends? And it's true. I find a lot of entrepreneurs, our biggest challenge is turning it off. Mm-hmm. So if you think that the problem is doing the work, you're probably not meant to be an entrepreneur, and that's okay. A 9 to 5 is a perfect suit. Make your money, live your life, be happy. But when people come to me and they want to be business owners, I tell them it's a completely night and day difference. You have to learn to control the clock, meaning that you get to do when you want, where you want, but that doesn't mean you don't get, you just get to slack off and not do anything.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I always focus on the 4 Ds. We do a time audit. I look at someone's calendar. How much effective time are you putting into what we call high gain or high income activities? And then I go back to the Dan Sullivan 4 Ds, the 4 Ds, right? So we either do it. I mean, the Delegate, it's the name of the show. Yeah. So we either do it right away. How many times is there something that can be done in 2 minutes and we just procrastinate until they all stop up, right? Just do it. Get it out of the way. Delay doing it. And there's a specific way. You have to get it on your calendar. You have to plug in the notes. You have to know what you're going to be doing in that time period. And I will say, as an aside on the delay piece, how many people do we know? I love asking this question. Someone will say, "Oh, I got to do this project," and I'll go, "Okay, how long is it going to take you?" "Oh, I don't know." No, let's just sit and take for 30 seconds. Let's decide how long it's going to take. From start to finish, if you had extreme focus, how long would it take you? And what does it normally come out to, Adam? It's like an hour, 2 hours, right? Okay, so let's get 2 hours on your calendar Friday morning when you have availability, and let's delay doing it, but let's get it done. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times the most difficult things really don't take as much time as we think. And what do? We just keep them on the to-do list because the priorities tend to be done last. We like to do the easy stuff to make it feel, I call them secret arsonists, right? They're behind the building lighting it on fire, and then they put it out during the day, and then they pat themselves on the back and go, yeah. Fire out, man. Like, no, I want you to delay to do things that are going to be useful, creating income or creating your life better, creating a better life. And then delegate it, of course. Delegate has to be done in a proper way. Now, you could probably teach me about delegation. You got a podcast about it, but I want to make sure when I delegate that I'm handing something off to somebody with the absolute knowledge that they can do it. And I think that's where a lot of delegation goes wrong, right? People, especially entrepreneurs, right? We're type A, we have 1,000 ideas a minute, and we tend to just spit our ideas around. We're like, I was in the shower and I thought of a business today. Go start it. And then the people are like, what are you talking about? We build self-storage. You decided you wanted to go buy a tractor supply company. Like, I don't, so like delegating clearly and giving people specifics. And this is a challenge for a lot of leadership, to slow down, to think about, again, it's emotional intelligence. How am I communicating this to the delegate, to the person I'm delegating it to? And are they capable? And then I want to get buy-in from them. Okay, great. Understand the idea, the objective. How long do you think it'll take you? Okay, cool. It's going to take you till Wednesday. Now, in my mind, I'm not going to think about it again until Wednesday, or maybe not at all, because they're going to give me that, thing back. I want to make sure that there's both communication going both ways. And then when I delegate, I'm handing something off. A lot of people delegate wrong. What do? They delegate and then they micromanage. They delegate. Oh, did you do that thing yet? Did you do that thing yet? Hey, it's been 3 hours. Did you do that thing? And what does it cause? It causes crazy stress, anxiety, animosity. Like, people don't want to be led in that way. They want to be led and respected. So when you delegate properly, you're really giving people responsibility. Again, it's part of significance, right? You're boosting them up, giving them an activity. And then the fourth D, which is really my favorite, is dump it. How many people are just doing ineffective things, ineffective times? They're really targeting things that maybe is in their time of genius, right? Some people are really good in the morning or really good in the evening, and then they'll book things, during that time. I want to protect that time that I know is my sweet spot, and that I'm doing highly effective things during that time. So, no offense, I don't do a lot of lunches with friends. I don't certainly get coffee with too many people, right? But I'll do it if it's in the right time frame and I think there's a right outcome.
For sure. Yeah. And it's, I think the dumping it is probably one of the more important things that people need to realize. It's one of those, the power of being able to say no, like learning how to say no. I've been trying to make that my default answer to almost everything, besides my kids. I'm trying to make that not the default answer with my kids, but it's one of those, like, I got to say no, so I can stay focused on what I need. So, but since I mentioned kids, you've got a picture of your family back there. You've got your kids back there. How do you kind of, I think even on your LinkedIn, if I remember correctly, it says girl dad on there, right? So, which is evident of the pictures. So how do you kind of manage dealing with this massive vision on a business level to being able to be a supportive father? How do you, being able to be that girl dad that you want to be?
Yeah, it's not a perfect science, as you're aware. I'm constantly trying to block time. We have family dinners here 3, 4, 5 nights a week. 3, I would say 3 at a minimum. My in-laws have been over every night since Saturday. And so I'm really, really lucky, and I'm really blessed that my dad is my next door neighbor and my in-laws live on the block. So we get together as a big family a lot of times during the week. I try to do specific things for each one of them, right? I have date nights with my wife. That's non-negotiable. We do that twice a month. We probably could do it more if we really wanted to. And then with the kids, the same thing. I do daddy-daughter dates. We go shopping. We go to lunch. I'll pick them up from school early. I'm just trying to be present as much as possible because, that old adage, they grow up quick. It's no joke. I got a 15 and a 12-year-old. These pictures you're seeing behind me are like 8 years old. So, they're much, much bigger than that. And now, time moves faster as they get older, man, right? You get into high school and it's like, holy crap. I don't even see the kid. All I do is pick her up and drop her off from school 9 times a week. And she's in, theater and all kinds of different things. So, I think it's just about maintaining presence. And then I think the second biggest thing is talking to them. I think in today's fast-paced world, iPads and, whatever, all thank God my girls aren't on social media yet. In fact, the one just got an Instagram account, but everything's moving so fast. I want to listen to them. I want to learn from them. I want to talk to them. I want to know who they are and, what they really want to do. And so, time is everything. The more time you can focus on, quality time with them, the better. So we're always doing something. We're always doing. My youngest was building IKEA cabinets in the basement with me last night. So it's just a matter of getting FaceTime and not being a stranger.
I love that. I think it kind of, you kind of tied two things together there. Earlier, you talked about the managing of your time and having your calendar. And if you can put that type of stuff in your calendar and say, hey, these are the protected times with my family, that's what it is. Like I protect the time that I'm most mentally aware of my business opportunities, so I can focus on that and I don't book anything in there. Well, I also need to do the same thing when my kids are there and I need to be there for them. So, and that's one thing that I tell people all the time I've got another podcast about being a dad. And it's like that's one thing you can't delegate is being a dad. Like you can't delegate that to anybody. And if you do, it's going to be a massive failure for you. I promise. So I love that you talk about that and building the IKEA furniture. While super frustrating by yourself, hopefully is a little bit easier when you have your little girl to look at and talk to. So that's a plus.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
All right. So we have not got to the fifth thing yet. What is the last item of your five?
Yeah. So the fifth one is what I call the trifecta, right? You got to bring these three things together. But number one part of the trifecta is execution. Right, you got to take action. The analysis paralysis kills so many dreams. Like people think and
kills me constantly.
It's unbelievable. So take action. My old mentor used to say the art is in the start. Just take some motion, take some forward progress, and then you kind of build the vision along the way. That's okay too, but go towards it. Second piece is course correction. How many of us are so fixed in our ways that this is how I do what I do. And then we meet, a roadblock that we can't overcome. So I think being flexible, being able to pivot, I've been in real estate for 20 years and I've done 20 different things in 20 years. I've been a broker, I've been a wholesaler, I've been an investor, I've been a lender. I've been all over the course of the business. But trying to stay focused on that vertical, right? So pick a vertical, but be good at a few things and understand that you can always pivot and look for different angles. And then last but not least is extreme accountability, right? Who are we accountable to? I love that quote. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems, right? And so what does your day look like? What is your routine? Who are you co-creating with? Who are you talking with? How are you feeding your mind? And making sure that those people are there to support you and not hold you back. It's a big piece. Again, it gets back to the limiting beliefs, right? You hear it enough times, it starts to become true. So, and that works both ways. So you have enough people telling you that you're worthy and you're capable and they believe in you and you're awesome and you should do it, you start to feel bulletproof. But the exact opposite happens when you surround yourself with friends who, maybe are doing a lot of happy hour and hanging out and not really creating anything. And they're going, what are you, nuts? Why would you do that? That's crazy, right? So who you surround yourself with matters. And that's why, you and I are in amazing groups like GoBundance. It's a system of support and having friends that aren't afraid to tell you when that's a stupid idea. You shouldn't do that. But still supporting you in your growth, right? Don't do that. Why not this? And I think that's a big difference with who you're having conversations with.
For sure. And it goes back to, Jim Rohn, you are the 5 people you hang around with most, right? And if you surround yourself with the right people that are saying the right things, it's going to make a huge difference in who you are. So I love that. When you're saying that execution, course correction, extreme accountability, even if you took away the other 4 and you just did those 3 and you paid attention to what you were doing, I mean, obviously you want to do all 5 of the things you're talking about, but man, oh man, like that trifecta is definitely going to be, there's no substitution for execution is one thing that I tell people all the time. Course correction, you constantly, like if you're anybody who knows anything about flying, you're constantly course correcting the entire time. That's how your plane gets from Atlanta to Dallas or wherever you're flying, as it's constantly changing courses because it needs to be on the right track. And extreme accountability, of course, you're a Navy guy, so you're going to say extreme accountability from 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗃, it's your fellow Navy guy. So I absolutely love it. It's phenomenal. All right. So if we were to wrap something up here and you were to kind of get some closing statements for some folks out here listening, whether it's about leadership, whether it's about management, whether it's delegation, hiring, firing, whatever it is, what were some last thoughts that you would really want to be able to impress upon anybody listening?
Yeah. Adam, I always, I try to end these things with a little bit of a challenge, right? Like if this resonated with you, if you're listening and you're like, oh man, I'm going through a tough time with my partner, or I'm trying to start a new business, or I want to take action. I always issue a challenge. I call it the 30-day Coach Joe challenge, but take 30 days of what we call intelligent and inspired action, right? Sit down, think about it. And really, the challenge would be bring one of your loved ones into the conversation, right? Talk about these 5 roads to victory that we just talked about. Figuring out which one of those that you really are walking today and which ones need more help and need more assistance, or I need to level up in those places, because one of these 5 things is most likely holding you back from your true outcome, the thing that you should be going after. And so I always offer people, a breakthrough call, totally free, no sales, where we can kind of coach into your next move and see if I can help, if I can assist. No fluff, no pressure. Again, just clarity and direction as to where you want to head. And especially because I'm sure a lot of GoBundance guys listen to your pod as well. I have the most amazing calls with those guys because as we just said earlier, right? It's like who you support and who you talk to makes a big difference in your life. So I'll include a link, but they can go to 𝗭𝗟builder.coach. And there's a breakthrough call there as well. I'd love to just chat, see what you got going on in your life, and see, where we might be able to make some improvements.
That's awesome. Well, Joe, I greatly appreciate all of the wisdom and knowledge that you kind of passed on, and obviously, offering a call like that to help people break through, I think is a phenomenal way to give back to some folks. And so, folks, if you're listening, if you're hearing this, if this resonates with you, please reach out to Joe. You said it was 𝗭𝗭𝐵uilder.coach. So go on to there, book a call with Joe. Obviously, he's got a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience that you guys have all heard about sitting here on the podcast. But Joe, I thank you very, very much for jumping in. Everybody listening, please like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what your favorite part of the podcast was. Tell us what part that you also disagreed with. We'd love to, as I tell everybody on at the end of this, I'd love to arm wrestle you in the comments section and tell you why you're wrong. But really looking forward to getting some feedback. Really great to chat with you, Joe. And I look forward to seeing everybody on the next show.
Thanks for having me, Evan.